Welcome to another edition of On the Books, Bowie's cable TV show about authors, writing, ideas, and how the city of Bowie encourages artistic development among our citizens. Today I have with me aspiring author and writer Eric Vargas, who has spent most of his life here in Bowie, coming to us, Eric, in Bowie in about the 5th grade?
Yeah, I started writing in the 5th grade. The first thing I wrote was a little story with me and my friends, and it was kind of squashed by my teachers. There was a lot of
So you met the
stories.
censors early in your career.
I did indeed. It was, I don't know, I was suspended from school for, apparently, there were several words that I wasn't supposed to use, and so I was suspended and then grounded at home. And I didn't write up until I got to Maryland, almost 10 years later. So.
Okay. And were you encouraged to write?
Not really. No, I never really met with any encouragement. Something I kind of took up on my own.
Okay. What motivated you to start writing?
I think it was kind of blind at first, but at the beginning it was just kind of a want to tell stories. But it wasn't until later on in my life that I felt that that by telling stories that you could create meaning in life. I had lost religion right about the time that I started writing, and to kind of fill that void, I kind of heralded it back to Nietzsche's idea of creation. The act of creation is the creation of meaning.
Now, you are a military child.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And where were you born?
I was born in D.C. I moved to Germany. I lived in Augsburg and Frankfurt, and from there I moved to San Antonio.
San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, San Antonio, Texas. And I stayed there up until the 5th grade, and then I moved to Maryland. I attended Tulip Grove Elementary, Kettering Middle School, Bowie High School.
Okay, Kettering Middle School. My children went to Kettering Middle School.
It's an interesting school. I was there during Dr. Whitehood's tenure. I met actually my favorite teacher actually is from there, Mr. Richardson. He was my Spanish teacher, and he was a fairly fiery person, I guess, as far as the romantics go, considering that's the language you talk. Good God in heaven.
And are you fluent in Spanish?
No. Mi español muy malo.
Okay, that's fine. And so about 19, you lose religion and pick up writing.
And I wouldn't say it was so linear, but that's pretty accurate of what happened. I was kind of at a lost place. I didn't really have any way of finding myself or anchoring myself within the, I suppose you could say, the reality that I was in.
Okay. And so you consider yourself a writer? Is that your vocation? Is that what you do?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I sit down at a computer and write, till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. If that doesn't make you a writer, I'm not really sure what does. But I don't know. I feel a little hesitant to even call myself a writer, though, because I figure the more you talk about writing, the less actual writing you do. It's a really lonely profession.
So sort of writers write, those who can't talk about it.
Yeah, or teach.
Oh, yes.
It's okay. I was going to be an English teacher, actually, before I got expelled from Anne Arundel Community College.
Well, we don't need that. So when you talk about writing, is that storytelling?
I think it is. I actually worked in sales for a long time, and I have found that in any kind of sales position, you always sell yourself, and what you're doing is you're pitching the story of yourself, and that's usually what makes people buy. And I suppose I could say I'd liken that to prostitution on a certain level, but and so
the writer as prostitute,
or sales,
the salesman as prostitute.
Correct. And I'm always very reticent in labeling myself as a writer. I'd rather just be who I am and not get in the way of that. I don't when I write, I don't want people to be thinking about the author, about me. As far as I don't want myself to get in between the work and the reader.
That's a very nice approach. I'm sure it's kind of hard to do because,
Yes,
as you mentioned, writing is solitary.
Yeah, extremely so, and it's even for someone who's extroverted, it's a matter of time management. You have to decide, am I going to go out with friends today? Am I going to go out and do X, Y, and Z, or am I going to stay here and do writing and work on, my novel, my musical piece?
Right, you have a piece of writing in progress right now.
Things fall apart.
Things fall apart, and where do you get your ideas?
It's kind of hard to tell. The idea of it itself came out. It started as a dream that I had back almost 8 years ago now. It was a rather horrific dream, and I think some people would call it a night terror, but I actively enjoyed it, which is
so
it's kind of weird.
You're writing as a dystopic? Dystopias. Is your writing a dystopia? Is that a horrible place?
I don't think. I don't know. Kind of like utopia is, say it's no place, but I think a dystopia is also not any kind of real place. It's, in Milton when he's writing his Satan, he says you can make a heaven of hell, and I think that big thing is just a matter of perspective, whether something's a dystopia or a utopia.
Oh, so you agree with Milton's Lucifer. 'Tis better to rule in hell than serve in heaven.
I think I think Milton himself was in Satan's camp. It's and that was kind of the thing. I mean, if you wanna consider Satan's ability, one of the things that Milton was having so much of a problem with in Paradise Lost is the fact that you have an omnipotent deity. How in any way can anything be heroically struggling against it? And so I think from looking at it from a narrative and purely technical terms, it was the problem he encountered was, how do I make this character enthralling? How do I make him interesting? How do I make it so that everything that he does actually has meaning, as opposed to just being allowed? When he's leaving, when he crosses the gulf and he goes to the gates of hell, and the gatekeeper there opens the gate. Milton then says, well, nothing could have shut the gates but God afterwards. But he said that the gate was raised by the gatekeeper out of their own pure strength.
Now, it's interesting. You've talked to us about Nietzsche. You've talked to us about Milton. You're obviously widely read. We have a philosopher. We have a poet. Are you a prose writer?
Yes, I mean, I typically write prose. I've dabbled a little in poetry. No one will ever see it. And that's just the way it's going to be. It's like my karaoke in Ukraine for the mafia. Just no one's going to see it.
You strike me as someone who may read a little William Blake also.
I've actually never read William Blake. In fact, and actually, I don't mean to dash your opinion of me, but I'm actually not very widely read. I've read a few of the classics, Dostoevsky, Homer.
Okay, I've known you for a little while now, and don't deal with this false modesty, please, because you are very widely read.
It's mostly nonfiction. It's not. I don't really typically read fiction books. I don't read novels very much anymore.
So is that where your ideas come from?
The nonfiction aspect?
Yes.
Sometimes they do. A lot of what I do, where most of my ideas come from, is I'll be driving around in a car and I'll see something and I'll say, oh, that's kind of interesting. I'd like to create a scene about it, around that.
So do you keep a writer's notebook?
No, I keep everything in the head.
And you trust your head?
I mean, it's carried me through so far.
Okay. And how long has this project that you're currently working on been an active project? I don't mean where you're having the ideas and you're thinking about it, but you said, I'm sitting down and writing
I'd
this novel?
say about 3.5, maybe 4 years ago. It started 8 years ago, like I said, with that dream I
Right.
had. And I ended up writing a 250,000 word manuscript in about 2 months, because it was something constantly. And then and the thing is that when I was done with it, I found that there were so many. It was so insufficient to what I wanted to say. The problem was that I wasn't able to articulate what it was I wanted to say. It was something that was on the fringes. It was on the fringes of the questions that I wanted answered. That and maybe to answer why I write is because I want to be able to answer and explore and investigate the questions that I don't see being asked or answered.
Does it make any difference to you if your explorations are ever read?
No, I don't think so, because it's personally enriching. I don't. It would be nice if other people did, but it's not a requirement.
So your life is better because you write.
I think so, yes.
And is there any pain involved?
No, I don't. I think it's almost wholly cathartic. I don't see. A lot of people talk about writer's block, or seeing writing as a chore. I've never approached it that way because I never judged myself.
Now, past writers who are on the show, have been on the show, have actually, one actually set their stories in a fictional town that strikingly resembled Bowie.
Yeah.
Another writer started, a person died in Bowie. McKeldin Library. There was a library that to me resembled McKeldin Library. What role does Bowie play in your writing?
Sadly, none, actually. It's not really where I don't really find Bowie to be particularly interesting. PG County as a whole, though, I find to be very interesting. I love up in Hyattsville, Adelphi, you find a very interesting mishmash of cultures. You have little enclaves of Hispanics, of blacks, and it's very fascinating how the cultures kind of start to mend together. It's very interesting.
Okay, now I also, in my conversations with you, there are a lot of references in the writing of yours that I've read to things Slavic, to Ukrainian ideas, to Russian ideas. In fact, in the little piece that you gave me, there were actual Russian phrases.
Yes.
How did you become interested in that?
I actually it starts back with that first dream that I had. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Ukraine, because I'd kind of always followed politics, and at the time there was a little something about Russia in the news, and I just that'd be an interesting setting to explore, something very, very alien to my own experience. It's no longer much anymore. I've been to the Ukraine several times. I'm actually going back again this April to do.
For how long?
I'll be there probably about till August.
Now, is this specifically to get more ideas?
Well, it's more to do research. I mean, the ideas the ideas aren't necessarily tied to place, but it's the idea to add authenticity to it. So I've retraced a lot of the steps that my protagonist takes in the novel. And the idea is just to give.
So the novel is actually set in Ukraine?
It's set in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, southern Russia. About as far north as it goes is Omsk and Samara.
Okay. Now, is it in Cyrillic Slavic lands, or is it include even the Roman Slavic lands?
No, it's just pretty much the old Soviet Union from Ukraine on eastward.
What about the Serbs?
Nope, sorry.
Okay, well, I just have
I know.
Right, well, we've known each other, and just to be fair to the audience, we have known each other and share a writing group.
Yes, and much alcohol.
Oh, wow. We have a drink or two. There's, in fact, the first time I encountered you, even though you say that writing is solitary, I met you in a writer's group.
Yes, and the reason that I started going for them is about a year and a half ago. I started was I wanted to get some reactions, some opinions from other people. Unfortunately, I found that they're actually very toxic, I think, to the writing process, unfortunately.
What do you mean by toxic?
I feel like writing groups are very often nativist in their approach to writing, and to kind of qualify that, it's very much where the writers will have an idea who write in a certain genre. They say, well, this genre has this conventions, this traditions, and the audience expects this out of any book that's within that genre. And I think that that's wholly the wrong way to approach it. I think it sabotages the writer's creative control of their work before they even really get a chance to begin it. And I think that that creative control needs to be aggressively defended from not just from your peers within the work and from your editors and from the publishing houses, but also from the audience, also from the expectation. And you've got to be able to free yourself up from expectation and from the fear of being judged.
Are you afraid to be judged?
Not particularly. I mean, I've been up before a judge before, so
well, I mean,
or maybe we can skip that.
Yeah, maybe we can. I guess do you think a group of people or an audience should be able to direct a writer?
No, absolutely not. I think that you look at Stanley Kubrick when he started out. I mean, Passive Glory, obviously not his first one, but he made several movies. In all of them, Full Metal Jacket, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Lolita, he had complete control, complete artistic control over everything from the very beginning of it. From the previous, he was the one who chose the story. He was the one who said, "This is the story. This speaks to me. I want to do a film about this." And all the way up until the editing process.
I didn't realize that Kubrick made Lolita.
He did.
Okay, did he know Nabokov?
I don't believe they did.
Okay.
I could be wrong, though.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time.
No, it won't be the last, for sure.
It won't be the last, and I hope it doesn't mellow you. Now, I remember being very taken aback at first by your writing.
Okay.
To be honest, I couldn't make head nor hair of it because of its density. It reminded me of I'm a school teacher, and I had a student talk to me about this brilliant author who I had to read. His name was Cormac McCarthy.
I like him.
And I thought to myself, a student has recommended me something to read. So I immediately ran off to the bookstore. I almost violated a rule there.
I know. I was waiting for you to do it, too.
But anyway, I ran off to the bookstore and I bought myself a copy of Blood Meridian.
Yes, and one of my favorite novels.
And I became completely, I don't even know,
depressed.
Not depressed. Depressed wasn't the right word. It was like reading Ulysses.
But James Joyce is another favorite.
Well, I love James Joyce. You talk about Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Brilliant.
I actually never really got into that one.
Well, I was educated by Jesuits, so it had a bell ringing for me. But McCarthy was just so dense, so violent, almost at first superfluous, that I had to go back to it before I appreciated it. I still remember that first night I saw you with refreshments. We won't talk about them. And it completely flipped the writers group on its ear. They didn't know how to cope with your writing. And I was right there with them. But then I realized your writing deals with ideas.
Yes.
And they're thick ideas.
Yeah, I think that for death and meaning are really, I think, the ultimate two questions, because they're tied and inextricably tied, because as far as life is concerned, because death is kind of the nullifier of all meaning. Everything pales in the face of that.
Now, when you write, do you look into yourself?
Me personally, no, not really. I mean, whatever percolates up, I simply just put on the page. I don't really have I could say maybe not a conscious direction of it, of what I'm going to write. I don't plan scenes out. I don't storyboard. I don't outline. I simply start off from wherever it was that I last had. That's where I start off again.
And you do it every day.
And I do it every day, and it's.
Do you even do it when you don't want to do it?
Well, there's never really a time I don't want to do it.
So it's like runners. When they get runner's high, you get writer's high.
Well, I kind of had a thing where kind of like Pavlov's conditioning of dogs. What I would do whenever I drank, I would write. And so if I ever drink, the conditioned response is to write.
Now that's really interesting. There's a lot of great American writers who are also known for their
Alcoholism.
conspicuous consumption of alcohol.
Faulkner, Hemingway. Yes.
My favorite poet, Hart Crane. A lot of all kinds of different people. The the Welsh poet. His name is slipping me right now.
It's okay.
No, drank himself.
Francis Thompson?
No, Rage Against the Falling.
Oh, Dylan Thompson.
Dylan Thomas. I'm really surprised that I had trouble remembering his name, because a friend of mine did a dramatic adaptation of his Child's Christmas in Wales, and I got to be Dylan Thomas in the play, and so I really liked that. But anyway, I'm getting off the topic. This is about Eric. The other thing that I felt a little dumb till I really understood McCarthy. I thought your name was Louis Toadvine.
Yeah, that funny story.
And you let me continue to think it.
For about a year, until just very recently.
That's right.
I often give out different names, and it goes back to what I said earlier. I was like, I never want the name to get in to elevate unwarrantedly the work. Yeah, I never want to get in between the reader, and the work.
But to liking I know another one of your author, I don't want to say heroes, but people you think are great authors are Melville.
Yes.
He writes Moby Dick, also one of my favorites.
Yes.
It stays unknown till the 1930s.
It's a little depressing for him. They actually, when they published it, they left out the epilogue of Moby Dick, and Melville was, of course, distraught, because everyone rightly asked, well, if everyone died, how was this story told? It's one of those things that happens, one of the unfortunate accidents, and maybe that contributed to it being unknown for as long as it did.
So, how will you feel if your story remains unknown?
Well, I think I would be, like I said, a little indifferent to it, because I'm not writing for fame. I'm not writing for money. It's not something that's really a concern of mine. Now, it would be nice if people read it and appreciated it and was able to...
And bought it?
And bought it, yes. But it's not, at the end of the day, if that's one of your considerations, that also is, to me, a surrendering of that artistic control. If that's because you're not being faithful, you're not being honest to the self.
Would you ever give it away?
Probably not.
Why not?
I don't just. I suppose if I am going to give it away, I would like to get something out of it. And maybe that's contradicting myself, but is what it
Well,
is.
no, one of the big issues, you're unpublished as of yet. And so when you finish the novel, you're going to have to make a decision. Are you going to seek a publishing house?
I'd like to do that.
Or are you going to self-publish?
I suppose I could self-publish. I don't know a whole lot about it to say, but I know that it's something that's becoming more and more widely accepted. And I'm not.
Do you think it's still vanity publishing?
I think
Does it still have
I
that?
think all I think all publishing to an extent is a little bit of vanity. I mean, you got to have a little bit of vanity. Say, oh, well, you know, people are probably going to want to buy this. So I think there's always a little bit of it.
Do you think people are going to want to buy your?
I have no idea. As I said, I don't care too much.
If you finish the first and people don't buy it, will you write a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, you sent me a little piece, and I don't want to give the story away.
Well,
But, I mean, essentially, I read this little piece, and there's a horse, and a kid gets thrown over an overpass. And there's another kid there, and a gun comes out.
Well, basically what happens is the piece that I sent you, it's from the novel Things Fall Apart, is it follows a character called the Pilot, who is a as far as protagonists go, is probably about as evil as you can get. And she's in this particular scene wandering through the ruins of Kharkov in a post-apocalyptic world. And she encounters these two brothers riding horseback on an overpass.
Okay, but I just want to ask a question about this because I got to wrap it up pretty soon.
Okay.
And justify yourself by this book. That line was in there.
Yeah, within the novel, the pilot actually takes one of the kids and, threatening to kill him, says, "Spare me, but justify yourself and I'll let you live."
Okay, well, there's only one more thing I want to know because I don't want to spoil the story. This has just been a great conversation with you about writing, but why kill the horse?
You've never wanted to shoot a horse?
Never. And thank you very much. Thank you for coming to this third edition of On the Books. And thank you, Eric Vargas, for being with us. You're more than welcome. And from now on, we'll call him Louis Toadvine.
Sounds good.
We're out of here.